In the heart of the Jenin refugee camp, under the extremely dire and limiting conditions of occupation, lives a thriving theatre and cultural centre that is a haven for the youth of Jenin. There they can process trauma, express themselves, and dream. While its building has been destroyed and many of its members detained or killed, the Freedom Theatre continues to be a symbol of cultural resistance. Known for their innovative, thought-provoking theatre and media productions, both in Palestine and internationally, the Freedom Theatre has created a generation of artists since their inception in 2006. With us today is Nabil Al Raee, who has been an actor, director, teacher, head of the theatre school, and 3 times artistic director of the Freedom Theatre. He has written and directed plays such as The Siege, which is based on the 2002 siege of the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem by the Israeli occupation forces, who were targeting freedom fighters. Nabil and the Freedom Theatre's work has been a vital part in continuing to tell Palestinian stories both in Palestine and globally. Nabil takes us on a journey of the very important, unique beginnings of the theatre, the challenges it has faced, its collaboration with other theatres in Palestine, and its programs in Palestine and abroad. This is our first episode focusing on theatre, a genre close to my heart, and speaking with Nabil about the impact this very special institution has had on so many people reminded me how important it is to continue our resistance through the arts.
على بلدي المحبوب وديني زاد واقي والبعد
يا طالعين عين الجبل يا مول المبيدين النار بين اليمن عين للهنا يا روح.
I'm your host, Afaf Shawabibi, and you're listening to Tarwida. Hi, Nabil. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Tarwida.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Nabil, we are so excited to have you with us because you are part of the Freedom Theatre. You've been a director, a teacher, you've been head of the theatre school, and you've been the theatre's artistic director 3 times. So I think you're the best person to speak about this amazing organization. Welcome.
Thank you. The most difficult part always for me to speak about myself, about my work and what I do, because I can say I'm an artist in Palestine, living in Palestine, doing art in Palestine. When it comes to the Freedom Theatre, there is always a history that needs to be mentioned. If you have the time and the energy and the patience, I can share with you that story, because I think it's going to be very nice for the people to listen how the whole story of the Freedom Theatre started.
Absolutely. And we really do want to hear about the history of the Freedom Theatre and how it began, because it's really unique and special. And we need to go back to its roots, which started
Of
with,
course.
well, I'll let you explain.
Okay, the Freedom Theatre really is a very unique story. And I'm saying that because I lived it. And part of it I didn't live, because the starting point of the Freedom Theatre was the Stone Theatre.
Mhm.
And why the Stone Theatre? Because the Stone Theatre related to the first Intifada, the uprising of the Palestinian people, where people had nothing to fight back with but stones. Back in 1987, most of the schools were shut down. Doctors were arrested, engineers, teachers. Everybody almost, I would say, was in prison. So the prison itself turned to be a school inside of the prison. But outside, normally the schools would be shut down for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. So to do something alternative, people used like different centers, like women's centers, even clinics, to find spaces to teach something. But not so many different activities, especially artistic activities or cultural activities. Although there was that, if I go back to that time, I would say this was the greatest and amazing image of the Palestinian struggle. Why? Because you see like everybody on the street demonstrating. Men, women, children, old people, everybody all together as a Palestinian society. There was no division at all. One day, after maybe a year, I would say, after the first Intifada started, a Jewish woman, her name is Arna Mer Khamis. She was married to a Palestinian man called Khamis. They met at the Communist Party. They fall in love and they got married. And they have 3 children. One day she decided to come to Jenin refugee camp alone with her bare feet, walking on the street. And she started to gather a group of children. She started to work with them. She gave them papers, pens, colors. She started like to let them draw what they feel at that time, making some small groups. Definitely, people in Jenin refugee camp suspected her, why an Israeli woman came to Jenin refugee camp, what she wants from us. By observing and watching day after day what she was doing, many people were impressed by her work. So one woman actually invited her to her house. She said, you can come, bring the children, and do the work that you do in my house. And she was happy by this invitation. I will mention this woman many times later on, but I would continue. Little by little, this work of these 2 women started to grow. More women joined the movement, and they started to have more groups of people. And then, of course, men joined, because Palestine, we can't leave our women alone. So the men also started to join. And this initiative grew to be a center. Little by little, people believed in her work. They got to know Arna much more. They managed to establish much more work in different villages, not only in Jenin refugee camp. And they called them, children houses. And they established like different groups, like painting group, theater groups, music, and so on. So actually, with time, they created an amazing movement of people who worked together during the first Intifada and tried to provide the society and the children's community with alternative education, which was needed, absolutely needed at that time. And some people heard about this project with Arna and this woman who received Arna in the first place. And they won the Alternative Nobel Prize from Sweden. And I think that was the highest prize that they got at that time. I think was $50,000, if I'm not mistaken. With this money, they thought about, okay, what can we do with this money? So they decided to build a theater. But to build a theater, you need land, you need equipment, you need $50,000 cannot build a theater. So the family and the woman who received Arna in the first place, they said, okay, we don't have to buy land. We don't have to buy all the equipment. You can build the theater above the roof of our house, in the top of the roof. And this is actually what happened. They managed to build the theater, and they call it the Stone Theater, above the top of the roof of Abu al-Abd, al-Abd home in the middle of Jenin refugee camp. A man who was well-known actor at that time in theater and cinema in Israel. Her son, Giuliano Mer Khamis, was a very famous actor who just decided to come and help his mother with her project. And he trained a group of students in theater. With time, they managed to do the first play for Ghassan Kanafani, Al-Qandil Al-Saghir, which was amazing. I saw the footage, the videos that they've done. People were very happy about the story. The Small Princess, the idea of bringing the sun into the castle, the challenges that people are facing was kind of similar to the story of the people in Jenin refugee camp. Everybody was happy about that. But with time, little by little, the theater functioned until I think the mid of
It was destroyed
19...
in 2002.
Yes, but before that, I would say, the theater functioned until the 90s, like mid of the 90s. And before the Oslo Agreement, Oslo Agreement was signed, Arna actually said, we don't have to replace the Israeli occupation with a different occupation according to Oslo Agreement. That means replacing forces with different, with other forces that speaks Arabic. This is not the solution. So I don't believe in this project. And in fact, Arna died in 1995. And with time, theater functioned little by little, but then was shut down because of different reasons, mainly financial reasons. Because, normally when people are looking at the Palestinian situation and find always that there is romantic kind of idea that there is an Israeli coming to work with the Palestinians, and in this way we can, put an amazing project together. And no, this wasn't the case. Actually, Arna was planting the meaning of the revolution, actually. She was a real freedom fighter, in my opinion. I consider her like she's done an amazing work in the Stone Theater.
There's a documentary called Arna's Children that was done by Giuliano, her son, and it shows like the story of not only how she built it up, but the children who participated and what became of them.
That's true. Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, because I wanted to speak about this part, actually. When the second Intifada started back in 2000, and when the Israeli invasion to Jenin refugee camp, most of the group that Giuliano trained and Arna trained, especially in theater, were killed. And in that film, Arna's Children, you can actually follow the stories of each one of them, except one of them, and he's one of the founders of the Freedom Theater also. Just to go back to the first point, and the woman I mentioned that received Arna in the first place, her name is Al Abed. It's his mother, Zakaria's mother. Zakaria's mother, she was the one who received Arna and give her place to start to work. Al Abed was shot by a sniper back in 2002 during the invasion. And she also became a martyr. So during the invasion, and this is like a personal story that I heard personally from Giuliano himself. He was telling me that I was performing in the Israeli, what it's called society, in my opinion, in Israeli society. And I couldn't really do that anymore. And suddenly I heard the story of my students back in Jenin refugee camp. So I took my camera and I started to follow. And when I arrived to Jenin refugee camp, I find most of the camp was destroyed and my students were killed. So he decided to carry his camera and make this film just to hold on with the heritage of his mother, Arna. And he made this film, Arna's Children.
Yeah. But you didn't meet her, right? Because you were younger?
I was younger, but I was also in a different camp. I wasn't there. Okay. I came after the invasion. I joined the Freedom Theater end of 2006 after an invitation from Giuliano himself. And I would share with you the story of me meeting him the first time.
Sure, would love to hear it. I also would love to hear about the point that Giuliano and Zakaria, and there was a third person, Jonathan.
Yes.
About when they decided to form the Freedom Theater and what their philosophy was and their mission.
Right. So actually, Zakaria was, after the invasion, he was still wanted by the Israeli occupation forces. Jonathan happens by coincidence that a group of activists came from all over Europe by bicycle to Palestine. And they came to visit Jenin refugee camp after the invasion. Jonathan, his background is nursing, so he wanted to understand more about which kind of medicine that exists for the people in Jenin refugee camp over there. And he heard the story of Arna and the story of the Stone Theater. So he wanted to meet Zakaria. And the first question he asked him, why theater? Why art? Why culture? Why you were part of that small group, why did you participate in theater? And Zakaria told him that a gun without culture is an enemy gun. Our struggle in Palestine needs culture to explain why we struggle, who we are, why we are fighting, what we are fighting for. What is our different individual stories to tell, and collective story, of course, the main story, the cause of Palestine, the story of Palestine. And he was surprised by Zakaria's talk at that time. And Zakaria mentioned that there's another guy who was, our main trainer. His name is Julian Omer Khamis. You should contact him. Actually, since that moment, Jonathan didn't leave the idea. And he started to call Giuliano. But finally, he managed to contact him. And Giuliano promised that he would come to Jenin. And they actually, 3 of them, they met in Jenin. I think 2 weeks after the first meeting of Zakaria and Jonathan, they met, 3 of them, and they said, okay, we should bring back the theater because it seems that this was an amazing place. Many people were thirsty to art and culture and theater. We need that as much as we need water and electricity. And with the help of the local people in Jenin refugee camp, they managed to find a building, which was a military base by the British. And after the Israeli occupation back in 1948, and when the camps were established, they used to make those kind of buildings as a center to provide goods for people like oil, sugar, and, all the different needs for the people. So they found this place and they find it full of garbage, abandoned. They brought the children, they brought the local people and started to clean it. And they turned it to a theater. After a big discussion among the 3 of them, they said, well, what we gonna call it? So Zakaria said, we as Palestinian people, we are longing for freedom. So I think let's call it the Freedom Theater. Actually, the Freedom Theater started back in 2005. They invited people from all over the world to do circus, music, a small theater, and they did the opening. This was the first step.
So just talk a bit about the name Freedom, because I've heard you and others from the theater in interviews talk about the meaning of freedom. So it's not just freedom from, let's say, the occupation, but there's other freedoms that are implied in here. Tell us about that.
Definitely. I think our freedom from our own self in the first place. I would say to be free from you, this is the starting point. And how do you do that? And actually this, we managed to put that in our curriculum, in our professional theater school, when we started to work on it, that we need to work on the personal story in the first place. Because if you solve your issue with yourself, then you started to be free and you started to be responsible artists. Because what we are looking for, not a normal artist, a human responsible artist. This is like the title that we started to work under. And then the society. To be free from our own society, I would say the occupations, not only one, but so many different levels. We mentioned that because the freedom starts from yourself and it's a build-up. If you, as an actor, are able to tell your own story and to face yourself and to challenge yourself, you will be able to be responsible to take other people's story and to tell it. And in this way, We will build up an individual in the right way, knowing himself and what he wants. It's very, very important in the process of teaching and our curriculum. We will be collectively as a society united and clear in our vision to fight this injustice and this occupation that we are living under.
It's really worth talking about all the different programs that you have, because as you said, it's not just a theater, it's a school. It's raised and graduated a generation, at least, of actors who are now doing different things. They're teaching, there's some photographers.
4 different generations.
4 different
4.
generations.
When we started to work, we wanted to do like theater groups for girls, boys, and then, mixed groups, the multimedia program, photography and cinema, having like taste of documentary, fiction, all of that. But then we knew our identity. We wanted to make the first professional theater school in the West Bank, the whole West Bank. And it was really the first professional theater school. We have the multimedia, that through the multimedia, we managed to do several documentaries about different stories. We have the children and youth program mainly. But to be honest, also, we were sometimes thinking, because we need funds. As any other theater, we need money to be able to continue our work. Sometimes we had to accept some programs that, even if we didn't want to do it, we accepted to do that because we want to run other programs. For example, when we did the Animal Farm play by George Orwell, yes, okay, we want to do the Animal Farm, but we want to do our own Animal Farm,
Right.
that would reflect our own story. When they give us the money and they come to see the final result, for example, they weren't really happy. So they won't come back to us and work with us again. We were good manipulators, I would say. Not because we want to be,
Yeah.
but because we can't work under conditional funding and leave it as it is. Okay, you want to condition us? Okay, let me be smart enough and deal with you the way you want me to deal with you.
Sure.
I will take your money. I will do the project that I want to do. And in the end, if you like me, you continue. If you don't like me, you won't continue with me. But we were always trying to fight to make the theater really go back to the roots and the normal place of being part of the Palestinian culture and being side by side with our own struggle, and make the people believe in supporting such a place like the Freedom Theater, Al Hara Theater, Ashtar Theater, Yes Theater in Palestine, and all the, the work of the other theaters. I'm not saying only that the Freedom Theater is alone by facing that. Many of theaters in Palestine are facing that. And then, with time, of course, we started to think about like projects like Freedom Bus, where we used to go and visit the most difficult situation that you can ever imagine under a military occupation, such as Masafer Yatta in the south of Hebron. Nowadays, they are actually being attacked.
Yeah.
So we used to go there, do some work, actual work with them, build their schools, and then hear their stories and do some kind of playback theater training with them, and also build a play about them, and then take this play to other communities like in Jenin to let them hear about the story of the people in Hebron. So we added different programs to the main programs of the Freedom Theater.
So most of your productions are ones that are created based on what's happening. Like, for example, Return to Palestine.
Exactly.
Return to Palestine was produced both in the Freedom Theater in Jenin, but it's also had life abroad as well. And that's happened with The Siege and maybe some other of your productions. Tell us about that. How did people start taking your work abroad?
A part of the education that our students got was devising. How to devise a piece, how to work as an ensemble, and also playback theater. Let's say after we tasted playback theater, we felt that, wow, this is an amazing way of building up an ensemble, because as you know, the playback theater is built with years and hard training. To be able to improvise a story that you heard for the first time and to act it out immediately, this needs lots of training among the actors themselves, the ensemble and themselves. So devising has been a big part of our work because our training on acting, they all led to devising. As I mentioned before, our productions that we built, it was a reading to the political and the social dimensions. We always have to read what is going on right now. The Siege, for example, is an amazing devised piece. I would say the style was a little bit different because it's a classical kind of theater that we did. But we did the story because we felt the story is still alive. It's not a story about some people who were expelled outside of Palestine and their story died. No, 39 people were kicked out of their homeland. 13 of them went to Europe. 26 of them went to Gaza. We managed to make over 21 recorded hours interviews with those people, the freedom fighters. We took their stories. I wrote the play and co-directed it with my colleague from the UK, Zoe Lafferty. We did the play and we did internal tours because, I would say like this event took a place back in 2002 in Bethlehem. Not so many people from the new generation knew about the story, so we wanted to bring it back. We did it after maybe 13 or 14 years after what happened. So people in Bethlehem received the play in an amazing way. But taking the Siege, for example, to the UK, oh my God, what a challenge. Every day in front of every venue, every theater, there was a Zionist demonstration. It was even before that, because this was our first time to make professional agreements between us and theaters in the UK. So when we decided to come, suddenly 2 weeks before our travel, bringing the Siege to the UK, suddenly the Jewish Chronicle are writing a huge article about the play itself, that the Siege play considered to be a threat to the Jewish community in Manchester. This was the headline. And then the Daily Mail wrote about that also. That a group of terrorists are coming to the UK to perform a play. That was the funniest title I've ever heard. Like a group of terrorists came to perform. And I said, okay, we are bringing a piece of theater. We are not bringing a tank into the stage. So this is why art is to open up a platform where people can agree or disagree on something. But thanks to them, they did a free publicity to us. Many people wanted to come and see the play. It was completely packed.
So it worked in your favor. So you have the two different audiences. So you've got the local audience who, for them, it's both for the participants and for the audience, it's like healing. It's like therapy to deal with the traumas and the realities, I imagine. Then you've got the international audience who are outsiders. How do these two audiences react differently to your productions?
You would be surprised if I mentioned that, the story is a story wherever you go. You have just to be smart. And I think I managed with years as a writer, director, and an actor sometimes to borrow the Hollywood mind of writing. What does that mean? Bring death and love story.
Yeah.
But I'm not lying when I wrote my story because I don't have to lie. Death is all over Palestine. Love is also all over Palestine. So I don't have to write a lie as much as they do in Hollywood. So, in fact, the importance of doing a play like The Siege in Bethlehem is a reminder. And I based my writing on real personal stories that was taken from the fighters themselves and through the tour guide that I met in Bethlehem and listened to his story about the event that took place in the Church of Nativity during the invasion. It was well received also emotionally amazing because most of the families of those fighters were there watching the play. So it's very, very emotional. It worked really well with the international audience, even during the time of the tour in the UK, but also in the US when we performed over there. I think the smartest part, I'm not giving a compliment to myself, I'm just saying, I did not mention any name in the play because I want to present the historical event. Of course, you're going to relate to different characters in the play, follow one of them or two. There were fighters, 5 fighters, and 1 tour guide. And this tour guide would also take us through the story of the play. So when people really followed the story in the first place, they followed an artistic, theatrical story. But in between, of course, there was a mention about the Israeli occupation, the role of the United States of America, the role of Europe, the role of the Arab countries. So the people went out of the play. First, in Palestine, in Bethlehem, people came to me and they said, thank you for reminding us. And people outside, they told me, many of them, thank you that you managed to explain to us what is the Palestinian struggle. Because I can promise you, this was the first play that addresses the armed resistance in Palestine ever. No one from the theaters all over in Palestine spoke about the armed resistance in such a clear way. And I really wanted to present the armed resistance as a case because I don't want to alienate our fighters. Our fight is not... some of the people would mention, I would prefer to fight through art. Okay, I respect that, but do not separate. Armed resistance is not separated from our struggle. Cultural resistance is all one part, one body. I'm not ashamed to speak that I'm so proud. I'm so in support, in favor of armed resistance in Palestine, as much as I chose as an artist to serve my people and my cause with art and culture. So I'm not separating that. That's why I said, yes, those are people. They have a story. Each one of them grow up with a story. I need to be able to share those stories. The reaction was amazing because it was amazing how both inside of Palestine and outside of Palestine, it was well received as a story, an artistic, theatrical story.
And beyond that, the Freedom Theater ended up, I don't know if it's because of people coming to visit Jenin, to visit the camp, or if it was from, seeing your productions internationally, but there ended up being friends of the Freedom Theater in different countries who support you in different ways. How did that happen?
The Freedom Theater started to speak about the story before the Stone Theater, the work of Arna. Giuliano used to make trips to the States, for example, or to Europe to find people who are very interested in establishing support to the theater. And from this way, people started to come and visit the theater. Expert people would come and teach at the theater. And in this way, we built up a movement, a theater movement, international and local, of amazing group of people who believed in the work of the Freedom Theater. And in this way, when people come and visit the place, the Freedom Theater, they would really see the work that we have done with our children. They would walk around with people in the camp. They get the sense of what is this community? What is this theater doing around? So they believed in this idea, and they actually believed in our work, and they still believe in it, and they are supporting and giving their hearts to this amazing movement in the Freedom Theater, developing our work.
So the Freedom Theater, in a way, doesn't have borders. It's really a global movement, you can call it.
It is.
Now, our listeners in Tarwida, they're all over the world. How can they watch your plays and how can they support?
Many times we managed to live stream our plays, but let me mention something I wanted to say from the beginning. Now I'm being the artistic director. I haven't been able to go to Jenin because I'm in a different refugee camp. I'm in Al Raee camp to do my work in Jenin because of what is going on right now in Jenin. The whole camp is being, almost empty from people by the Israeli occupation forces. And to do some work is really difficult. We are trying to make our plan, to try to find alternatives, to still see if we can do some work in different camps, like my camp, for example. It's not the same situation as Jenin refugee camp, but at least, we can move around, at least. And we are focusing on redesigning our programs, including the theater school, the children and youth, and the cinema and photography part. When we are ready to live stream, of course, we will mention that to everybody. You will find it through our pages, like on Instagram, Facebook, and the main website of the Freedom Theater. You can support us with spreading the words, telling the story. And yes, money is a big part for sure, whoever can support the theater. But to be honest, sometimes when I think about what is going on nowadays, I find blood and death is higher than any art, because art can sometimes explain what is going on. I think those days we need to document everything that is going on around us in Jenin and in Palestine and in Gaza. Of course, we will find the right time to make the plays or films about what is going on. So it's a matter of time. About hope, I think you should forget about everything I mentioned, and you would find me hopeful every day by waking up from my bed and trying to work and do the job that I'm trying to do, is to spread the word and also trying to teach my children, my community, how to say no. And I think every big power collapses in the end of the day, especially when it's based on injustice. So don't lose hope. Definitely keep the hope. In Palestine, we plant the hope, we feed it with water, with some food until we'll grow to reach freedom. So don't give up hope. I'm not giving up hope by sharing with you those painful stories sometimes.
I'm glad to hear that. Last year, the Freedom Theater was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. What did that mean to you?
Nothing. Nothing. It's a title.
Yeah.
What it means to me, yes, the Freedom Theater as an actual work is reaching people. And this is what is important for me, is the ideas being reached, the stories being delivered in the right way. Those big, titles doesn't mean anything. For example, last time the Palestinian film was nice, was good to win the Oscar. But why did it win the Oscar? There's an amazing Israeli, nice guy who did the work together. Romantically, they want to give us the Oscar. That's nice. Our story is being around. But this is not the amazing achievement that I'm really looking for, at least personally. I don't want my colleagues to be mad at me when I mention something like that. But I would say it doesn't mean anything. What it means, actually, when I talk to you, when I talk to the people, when I share with people around all over the world and meet them through culture and art, this is the right thing, because this is the only language that can speak to the people. I think, Palestine, many times, and I've been witnessed, is such an inspiration for people to change their life. This is what is important for me.
Nabil, thank you so much for your time and insight. We appreciate it more than you know, because we understand how difficult it was for you to not only get here, but to continue the work that you're doing as part of the Freedom Theater. So we can't wait to come and meet you in person.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Tarwida, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the best of Palestinian arts and culture. For more information, please follow us on social media and don't forget to subscribe. Salam.